Dear students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. This module is continuation with the previous module, that is Diagrammatic and Graphical Representation of Data Part 1. In that module, we discuss what is frequency distribution, cumulative frequency distribution, one-dimensional diagram. Now, in this module, we covered graphical representation of frequency distribution and its type. Here, we discuss histogram, bar ogive curves and other diagrams. So let's get started. Graphs consider the frequencies for the representation of data and are called frequency graphs. These graphs are basically used to describe the characteristic feature of the frequency data. The method for the preparation of the frequency table is also discussed in our previous module, that is diagrammatic and graphical representation of data part 1. The frequency graphs usually depends on the type of data, whether it is discrete or continuous. Discrete data are usually represented in the form of bar diagrams or discontinuous curves, while the continuous data are represented by means of curves. While the construction of the frequency graphs, usually the value of the variable are taken on the x-axis and the corresponding frequency are represented on the y-axis. The graphs that are used for this purpose are histogram, frequency polygon, ogives. First, starting with histogram. This is most commonly used graph that you can easily see in the literature. It is among the most commonly used method for the diagrammatic representation of a grouped frequency distribution. On one axis, it consists of bars with height proportional to class frequencies, and the width of the bar is defined through the class boundaries on the horizontal scale. Generally, same width is considered for all the bars, but it is not essential, as it depends on the class width. In histogram, there is difference in terms of height only due to the class frequencies. The area of each bar is calculated by multiplying the width of the class and the frequency. The main difference between the bar diagram and histogram is that there is no difference between the bars, or you can say there is no gap between the bars, while in bar diagram there is a gap between them. Also, the bars in the bar diagram are of equal width, but in histogram it depends on the width of classes and may be unequal due to unequal class width. The following example help to get an idea about the construction of the histogram. The data is given in the following table. In the first row, we have class marks, that is 10 to 15, 15 to 20, that represents class interval, and here the width is 5, and correspondingly we have frequency of these class intervals. Now, from the graph you can easily see that as the width of the intervals are same, hence the width of the bars are also correspondingly same. So one can easily say that width of the histogram of the bar may be same or may not be same. That depends on the width of the class interval in the histogram. So from the figure 1, one can observe that class marks are shown on the x-axis and the corresponding frequency is available on y-axis. The height of the bar is based on the frequency value. Also, from the figure 1, one can notice that there is no gap between the bars because as values in the table are shown in interval and there is no gap in upper limit of one class and lower limit of succeeding class. So, to represent the continuous data as in an exact manner, bars are represented in the figure without gap. Now come to frequency polygon. Frequency polygon is considered as another method than histogram for graphical representation of the data. It is generally plotted when all the classes have same width. It is basically obtained by joining the mid value of the class interval corresponding to the class frequency. The endpoints of the polygon are joined to the axis, that is basically the midpoint of classes at end of the frequency distribution. Hence, frequency polygon is basically used in the situation of same class width and covered similar area as histogram. Frequency polygon also helps in understanding the skewness property of the data. One can also detect the mode value from the frequency polygon by drawing a perpendicular from the highest point on the curve to the axis, as the frequency polygon of various distributions can be plotted on the same axis for comparison purpose, but this is not possible in the case of histogram. In histogram, if we have to compare two histograms of different data set, then we require separate graphs. Another important feature of the frequency polygon is that it can be drawn without plotting the histogram only when the midpoints of the classes are known. In the following figure, a frequency polygon is constructed from table 1 data. In the graph, one can observe that it is a curve that is represented with the joining of midpoint of class interval and correspondingly class frequency on the y-axis. So, from the figure we can see that these are the dots represented the value of the frequency, and we join these points with the line, and this curve is called frequency curve. Ogive curve is constructed from the cumulative value of frequency, that is, cumulative frequency values are plotted against the x-axis. There are two types of ogive curves, less than or more than. In less than ogive curve, the curve begins from the first interval and keep on increasing upward corresponding to the next interval as the frequency are cumulated. That means frequency value of previous frequency are added in the next frequency value. Hence, it keep on increasing, and at the last interval it shows the total frequency of data plotted against the last interval. Similarly, in more than ogive curve, the curve begins from the total cumulative value from the first interval and keep on decreasing at next interval by subtracting the previous interval frequency from the total frequency value. If we repeat this process till the last interval, then one can observe that the curves seem to be like a elongated S and is sometimes called a double curve, with one portion being concave and the other being convex. Also, ogive curve can be constructed for unequal width of classes in the frequency distribution. It is also possible to construct more than or less than ogive curve on the same graph, and one can observe that if both curves are drawn on the same graph and these curves intersect at a point, x-axis value of that point is the median value of the frequency distribution. There are following some of the uses of the ogive, as we can already discuss that ogive curve is used to find out the median of the frequency distribution. It is also used to find out quartiles, deciles and percentiles, etc. It is also used to observe the cumulative frequency of a particular class interval of more than and less than type. It can be used to observe from the shape of the curve the number of observations which are expected to lie between two given values. Now, from table 2 you can see we have class marks on the first row and we have corresponding frequency value, and in the third row we have cumulative frequency value of less than type. The cumulative frequency value are shown here. Now we can see from figure 3 that we have a upward trend curve that is an ogive curve of less than type. In figure 3, ogive curve represents the cumulative frequency of less than type and it is of increasing type. So we can see from the table 2 that we have cumulative frequency value 5 in the first class interval. So on the ogive curve it is 5, and similarly we have 89 cumulative value in the 55th class interval, and correspondingly we have value here. So it means that less than ogive curve is always of increasing type. Now come to second ogive curve, that is more than type. We use the same data for graphical representation of more than type of ogive to see the difference of two types of ogive curve. So, as we know that in the more than ogive curve we have total value in the first class interval and we subtract the next succeeding frequency value from the preceding frequency, and similarly you can see here the first value is 89, after that we have 85 and so on. Our last value is 5. Now here the figure 5 represents the both less than and more than ogive curve, and we already discussed that where these two ogive curves intersect, that point is called midpoint or median. In figure 5, ogive curves of two types are plotted graphically. From intersection point of these curves, draw a perpendicular to the cumulative frequency polygon horizontal scale, that is these two curves intersect at point value 49 at y-axis and approximate 30 at x-axis. The approximate value is considered as the median value of the data. Now come to stem and leaf plot. It is considered as an alternative to the histogram, as it gives a visual representation similar to the histogram, but it does not lose the details of the individual data points in the grouping. For example, the data of expenditure on calls in a week of 30 persons are given below. Here, these are the expenditure values that are given here. In table 3, on the left hand side, we have stem, that is, it represents the 10th unit value, and on the right hand side we have leaf that represent the one place value. So how to construct stem and leaf plot? Let us suppose our first observation is 11. So we keep the 1 on the left hand side and 1 on the right hand side, because left hand side represent the 10th place and on the right hand side leaf represent the 1st place. So similarly other values can be put here, and the shape of the curve, if we rotate the table on the left side, then you can see it is similar to histogram. The stem on the left represent the 10th unit and the leaf on the right represent the unit of ones. So the individual data points can be represented in the graph. Hence, from the graph one can observe that it seems like a histogram, but the difference here is that the values are used in place of bars. Hence, the major drawback of this diagram is that when we have large amount of data, then it is difficult to construct stem and leaf diagram. Now we are going to discuss one more diagram, that is pie chart, when the total values can be represented by a big circle and the various component of sectors cut inside it. This type of diagram is known as pie diagram. It is also used to show the percentage breakdown. The total is represented by 360-degree angle. It can be divided into a number of small angles whose degree is according to the value of the categories in the data. There are some steps for the construction of pie diagram. These are the category or item values are expressed either in percentage or degree. For example, number of males / females in the data are expressed either in percentage or in degree. Second is, one can find the percentage of the items by dividing the total value by total value and multiplying it each by them by 3.6 for degree purpose. For example, the following data represent the expenditure on entertainment and communication of households. So in the first column we have items that represent that in which we have cable bill, mobile bill, internet bill and other telephone bills, movie ticket, etc. And expenditure in these different items are given correspondingly in table 4. First we want to find out the percentage. For that we first take total of these expenditure, that is given as 3,250, and we divide, and now to find out the percentage of cable bill we divide 250 by 3,250, and we will get 7.69 as the value, and correspondingly we find the percentage values of other categories also. Now from the figure 6 you can see that we have different percentage for different items that is represented through pie chart, and it is very convenient for a person to understand the pie chart very easily. Hence, one can easily understand the expenditure on items through percentage from the pie diagram. This is the reason that pie chart is mostly used to present the data, as it is easily understandable even by a layman person. Now we come to the conclusion part, and we have discussed that in this module we discuss graphical and diagrammatic representation of data. In this module we concentrate on graphics and different types of graphical techniques like histogram, ogive curves, pie chart and stem and leaf chart. Thank you.